How much bullfrog are you getting down there? Hey everybody, Ian here, New Young Pizza Guy. We're making dough today. It's not hard. Well, it's not easy, but it's not too hard. It's accessible. I've been making this dough recipe for a while now. It's been a couple of years. I've been working on it, been changing it, and this might be the most streamlined that I've gotten it so far. And we're gonna do it today. This is a sourdough pizza dough. Okay, so in order for you to make this, you have to have a sourdough starter. Okay, that's kind of one of the few things that you actually need. This is mine. If you don't have a starter of your own, there's a few different ways that you can get one. You can visit your local bakery, or if you have a pizza shop that you know does sourdough pizza dough and ask them for some of their discard. You can actually order starter off of the internet. I'm pretty sure Amazon sells it, but there's, you can just Google sourdough starter and you'll probably find something there. Or you can make one yourself. And actually we're gonna have a video about that coming up, so stay tuned for that. Now this right here, we fed this earlier today. I use 100% wheat flour. Okay, so that's kind of what makes this recipe unique. Now I'm not saying you need to change. If you have a starter and you've been feeding it, 00, you've been feeding it bread flour, all-purpose flour, you don't need to, all of a sudden just like change your recipe. But I like using the whole wheat flour for my starter. It gives it nice flavor, it gives it a good scent, and it gives it kind of a good look too. So whenever you're mixing it into the bread flour, the 00 flour, or whatever white flour you decide to use, when you mix it in, it kind of gives it these nice little speckles. And we're going to talk about tools. So this recipe doesn't really require a lot of equipment. I have everything laid out here in these different rows. You have necessary gear, optional gear, and then really optional kind of personal preference tools, just stuff I like to use. So first off, you're going to need to have a bowl. For putting your flour, putting your water in, you have to have a large bowl, some kind of a large vessel. You need a pitcher for your water. You're going to need a digital scale, and then of course your hands. We're not using a stand mixer in this recipe. Maybe we'll do another video down the line using a stand mixer. Let me know. Put it down in the comments if you want a dough video with a stand mixer. This recipe, we're only using our hands. So the optional, but kind of make your life easy category, 2 small containers, one for weighing your salt and one for weighing the water that we're gonna hold back. So we're gonna hold a small amount of water back from this recipe, from the full amount. We're gonna put it in this cup. A digital thermometer. This is for making sure that your dough isn't too warm or too cold. A small digital scale, available at most fine gas stations. This is going to be for weighing out those very small amounts of salt and water. This scale is great, but it's not very sensitive. It can be off by a couple of grams. This one dials it in. And then the personal preference category, I like to try to keep my hands as clean as possible in the early stages of mixing. So I use this wooden spoon. I use the handle to mix. And then when things stick to the side of the bowl, that's when I bring out this nice silicone bowl scraper to kind of work down the outside and keep things clean if possible. And also notebooks. Write down what you're doing. As you're going, as you're making changes, as you're doing things that aren't the same as what you did the time before, write it down, make notes, as detailed as possible. Then you can come back to them, you can reference them, and if something works really well, you get it right, nothing worse than being like, oh, what did I do that time? I did something different, but I don't remember exactly what it was. Write it down. You'll thank yourself. And you'll thank me. Maybe. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started making the dough. All right, so we want to use water that's around 95 to 100 degrees. So what that's going to do is when combined with the ingredients, with the starter, when it's combined with the flour and everything else, and as we're mixing it, it's going to give us a final mix temperature of in between, about 75 to like 85 degrees, somewhere in that window. And that's kind of what we're going for. We want to make sure that the final mix, that's when everything is put in, is around 80, 78, 80, 82, somewhere around there. So we'll start with some warm water. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be exact temperature, you know, it can be at or around. So kind of in between 95 to 100. All right, and just fill it up all the way, or as much as you need. And that brings me to another point. How much dough are we making today? We have to do a little bit of math. Okay, so this math is called, it's called baker's percentages. So pretty much what a baker's percentage is you have your full amount of flour, and that's 100%. So if you say you're doing a recipe that is 1,000 grams of flour, okay, that 1,000 grams is your 100%. So if you want to do a 70% or a 60% hydration, then you would multiply 1,000 times 0.6. That gives you 60%, which is 600. So if we wanted to do a 60% hydration dough, we would need 600 grams of water. That percentage works for every other ingredient. This recipe is going to be a 70% hydration. So that'll be, you know, 700 grams if it were 1,000 grams of flour. And I do 13% starter. So that's going to be 130 grams. We do 3% salt. So that would be 30 grams of salt. Now, how much dough are you actually making? So for this recipe, we're going to be making enough for 6 pizzas. 4 at 280 grams, 1 at 450 grams, and then 1 at 600 grams, the big sheet pan pizza. So that is, do the math, 4 times 280 plus 450 plus 600, 2,170. So I'm going to go over to the bread calc. Bread calc is brdclc.com. It's a website that I use to figure out the amounts for all of my baking. So the top field is where you enter in your flour in grams. The second field is your percentage of hydration. The third is your salt, and the fourth is your leaven. And you pop all those numbers in and it gives you a full amount. It gives you a dough weight, or also known as your yield. This will help you determine how much dough you're going to have to work with. I use this website in reverse. I know how much dough I need to end up with, so I alter that top number, the flour number, to reflect the full amount of dough weight at the end of the recipe. I use this for all of my baking recipes. It's a great website. Check them out. So I have my percentage locked in at 70%. I have the salt locked in at 3%. And I have my starter locked in at 13%. So now I need to just modify the amount of flour that I'm going to be using until the dough weight gets close to, what was that number? 2,170. Let's go 2,200, just so if we have a little bit of extra, it's fine. Because, you know, some's going to stick in the bowl, some's going to stick to your fingers, some might fall on the floor. It's good to have a little bit extra. You want to overshoot it a little bit. You know, if you're perfect, great, but make a little bit more than what you think you're going to need, because some of it is going to get away from you. Okay, so 1,200 grams will give us 840 grams of water at 70% hydration, 36 grams of salt at 3%, and then 156 grams of starter at 13% will give us 2,232 grams of dough. That's total. So we're going to go with that. That's more than what we need, but I can take the little extra bits and kind of, you know, put it in other pieces or put it all in the big one. You're not going to notice like 15 grams of dough when you have a 600 gram dough ball. All right, so now we're going to get started. So that means I got to strap on the first person harness. Every Friday night, all those pizza shorts, all those videos that I post, this is what I look like while I'm doing it. I'm struggling. We got our scale. We're going to place the bowl, as you see, on top of the scale. Oh, here's an important thing. So we're holding back some of the water. Okay, so this recipe is going to call for 840 grams of water. We're going to pour 800 into the bowl. We're going to save 40 grams of it. That'll be used in addition to the salt later on, and you'll see why. But just trust me, keep 40 grams, 30 to 40 grams. It doesn't really matter like how big of a recipe that you're making. Hold back around 30 to 40 grams of water in your little small cup. Now this is the warm water. This is our 95-ish degree water. We're going to pour that straight into the bowl. Now there's some debate about whether you do dry first or wet first. I personally am a wet first kind of guy. I've done both. I find that when I do the wet first, I have an easier time incorporating the flour into the water. Okay, so now for this recipe, we're going to be using all bread flour. Okay, so you know there's lots of recipes out there that's like, yo, you have to use 00 flour. You absolutely have to use it. It's the only way to make pizza dough. It's not 100% true. This is a really good kind of like beginner's flour. It makes for an easier to handle dough ball. It doesn't get overly wet. You can make really strong pizza dough with this. So I'd say if you're going to be starting out, or even if you're been doing it for a while, this is the way I would go right here. We got our water in. Now we're going to be doing 1,200 grams of this. So tear it out. 1,200 grams right in. $12.02. $1,200. Looks good. From this point, you're going to remove your bowl from your scale. Your scale doesn't want you mixing and churning and doing stuff on top of it, okay? At this point, you could get in there with your hands. You could just go all in. And if you want to go all in, that's fine. You're going to end up with a glove of dough on your hand. And you're going to have to scrape it all off, and it's going to take a while. So I think get yourself some kind of a utensil. I like using this spoon, early wood. Awesome. And I go in there with the handle. And I kind of just work it around the edge, stirring at the bottom, incorporating the flour and the water beneath the surface. And as I do this, the stuff on the top falls down. It gets in there. And see that? That would be your finger. That would be your whole hand right there. And I don't know, maybe you want that, but I don't want that. And as we're going, kind of come over to the edge and pull it down in under itself. Kind of work around the perimeter of the bowl. And another thing I like about this this spoon is this little guy right here. Perfect for the thumb. So if you see somebody out there in the world and they're mixing their dough and they got their thumb in the end of the spoon right there, you know they learned it from me. The old thumb spoon. All right, look at that. See, it's coming together. It's starting to look good. Really sticking. And this is definitely considered a high hydration dough. I think that anything above like 60%, I would consider high hydration. Lower than that, no big deal. 55, whatever. Probably won't even stick to your hands. But this is 70. This requires a little bit of finesse, a little bit of know-how. And you could definitely make this recipe with less water. You know, it's not going to affect it too much if you drop it down to 65 from 70. Just do the math. Just instead of doing 70% hydration, 65. There will be a quiz. At this point, there's not much else that we can do with the spoon. I'm going to take our little jug of water here. Wet your fingertips. Clean your spoon off. So you're wetting your fingertips. Very important. Makes it so it pretty much doesn't stick at all. But it's going to stick a little bit. So at this point, wet your fingertips and you can get into the bowl. Now the little bit of extra water in there is not going to like completely mess up your ratios. It's not going to mess up your hydration. Okay. So here what I'm doing also is kind of getting my hand down into the bottom of the bowl and turning it over and getting all of any excess flour that might be hiding there underneath and mixing that in. And see, as much as I tried to keep the hand from getting a flour glove, it's going to happen. just trying to keep it from happening as severely. Why am I obsessing about flour? It's my life. Look down in the bowl, and you don't want to see any dry flour. This is when the bowl scraper comes in handy. You could also, you scrape it off like that. Works great. You could also just wet your other hand and kind of wring it off. Just. So when we get it to this point right here, this is pretty much good to go. This is incorporated. And at this point, you kind of have to ask yourself, how much time do I have? Because a lot of this recipe, a lot of making sourdough, making pizza dough, making bread, that sort of thing, a lot of it is about time management. So you get to this point, you ask yourself like, okay, how much time do I have? Can I wait 30 minutes before the next step? If the answer is yes, then we do auto lease. Auto lease. Auto lease is the process of letting the flour like fully absorb the water, okay? It usually takes about 30 minutes. There's discussion on whether or not you really need to do it. I like to do it because I think it makes the dough easier to handle, but I also don't think that it's fully necessary. I think that if you don't have time to do it, don't do it. Just mix everything together. Today we have time to do it. Okay, so today we're gonna show you what it looks like after a 30-minute rest. I'm gonna give it a little scrape around the edges, because all this right here, this is all our dough. Even the stuff that's stuck to the side of the bowl, that's our dough. That's part of our measurement. So try to keep it all together if you can. So if you are doing the auto lease, just go ahead and get yourself, a little light duty towel, any kind of towel. Just drape it over the top and let it hang out. Just let it sit there for 30 minutes. Kind of regroup, clean up. We'll be back. Action, we're back. It has been about 30 minutes and our dough looks like this. So we haven't added the starter, we haven't added the salt, we haven't added the additional water yet. So that's the next step in the process, is to incorporate the starter, and then we're going to put the salt in and then the rest of the water. And then after that, we'll get into the formation of the gluten. It's going to be a really good time. We're going to jump over here to the small scale, and we're going to measure out the rest of our water and our salt. So does anybody remember how much water we held back? I think it was, pretty sure it was 40 grams. We're going to save 40 grams of it. 40 grams. Okay. 41. All right. Doesn't have to be exact. It could be off by 1 or 2. It's not going to change your world. Okay. And now we need to measure 3% salt. So that's going to be 36 grams. And this is kosher salt that I'm using here. You can use sea salt. The only salt that I would say don't use would just be like regular, iodized table salt, the cheap stuff. So 36 grams. Seems like a lot of salt, but this is a lot of dough. And, that's also to say you can make this a lot smaller. I'm making 6 pizzas here. That's a lot. I'm cooking for a lot of people. If you just want a couple of pizzas, shrink it down. Just shrink it all the way down. You can make 1 pizza with these same ratios, these same percentages, and it'll work out just fine. So just if you shrink down the amount of flour that you're going to use, and then you apply those percentages to that small amount of flour, then you have a smaller recipe. That's kind of the beauty of the baker's percentages. Once you have that notion down, that percentages exist in relation to the amount of flour that you're using, you can make it as small or as big as you want to. Now we're going to incorporate the starter. We fed this morning 1 to 1 to 1. That means that there was the same amount of starter from the previous jar, the same amount of flour, and the same amount of water. So it was 100 grams of each. And it took it about 4 or 5 hours to get to this point, and this guy's ready to go. So what we're doing now is we're going to put our starter in here, and we need 156 grams of starter. So we'll put it on the scale, and then slowly spoon our starter in. You can see that's nice right there. That's what you want to see. Kind of the consistency of peanut butter there. Okay, so wet your finger, scrape it off. So 156, so that's kind of a lot, but that's what we need. 156. That looks good. So off of the scale again. Now you're going to wet your mix in hand, and you're going to grab from the corner, pull up, fold over, and repeat that. Pull up, fold over, and we're kind of encapsulating the starter here. We're making a nice little starter pocket, a little starter dumpling. We're going to work our way around the bowl, and then push down. Grab up, push down, grab up, push down, and just repeat until you can start to see the starter, mix in with the dough. It's another benefit of using the whole wheat flour in the starter is that you can actually see it. You can actually see it when it's incorporated. You're not kind of guessing on whether it's mixed in or not. Okay, if it's sticky, keep wetting your fingers. And note this motion here too, because this is the motion that you're going to be using whenever we get to our stretch and folds or our kneading. So turn the bowl a little bit, grab a piece, pull it up, tuck it in. Over and over and over. So this, in addition to us actually like incorporating the starter into the dough, we're also building gluten at this point as well. Now you can see that it's starting to change color a little bit. You can see some of the brown from the wheat is like mixing in with the bread flour, and they're becoming one. All right, so at this point, it's pretty well incorporated. You could take it a little bit further if you wanted to, and really get it mixed in together, really get it homogenized. But this is good. At this point, we can go ahead and add our salt. So we're going to take the salt, sprinkle it over the top. Try to keep it, nice even layer. You don't want to dump it all in one spot. I mean, you could, but it's easier. The idea is to have the salt dissolve into the dough. And so by spreading it out, you're giving yourself a better chance for it to be evenly distributed. So this is our reserved water, the 40 grams. I'm going to kind of just slowly pour it and try to get all the salt wet. As best as you can. Okay. Now, the starter is incorporated, the salt is in, the rest of the water is in. This is it. Now we're going to mix this with the same type of motion. Grabbing a piece, tucking it in, working your way around the bowl until you can't really feel the salt anymore. That's how you know when to stop. So this takes a few minutes. As you're doing it, you'll have some little water pooling up on the sides. I like to use that to kind of like push up on the side and kind of clean off any excess that's on the side of the bowl. Not really a necessary step, but it's just something that I like to do. And the salt being added into the dough, it changes the texture of it big time. You can feel it. It tightens up. And what does the salt do? The salt seasons the dough. If you didn't have salt in your dough, it would not taste good. Salt also slows down the fermentation. So it allows you to kind of, do these long fermentations with sourdough that will develop a lot of flavor over time. All right, so we're mixing in. So I'm gonna like kind of feel around the bottom here, so I can still feel the salt a little bit. I can still feel a little bit of the graininess of the salt. So I'm gonna keep mixing until I don't really feel any of that. This is probably as ugly as it will be in the process, and you might be at this point and you're thinking to yourself, I did something wrong. Something's not right. It's not true. You're doing great. Just keep mixing. Keep kneading until you don't feel It's a special sound. Until you don't feel any salt. So I'd say we're there. And also another good indicator is you don't want there to be too much excess water. If you see like a bunch of excess water pooled around, then you know you can kind of keep going. But you want it to be wet. It's a wet dough. All right, so that looks good. Feels good. I don't feel any salt anywhere around the bowl. Now this is called our final mix. Okay, so this is the flour, the water, the yeast, the salt, the held back water. All of it is mixed together. This is the final mix. So at this point, we can see if we got the temperature even close to being right. So our goal temperature is like 78 to 82, 80, somewhere like low 80s, high 70s. And let's see if we got it right, okay? Ooh, look at that. 82.9, so 83. So if your dough is too hot for whatever reason, you can take it and put the whole thing in the fridge. Keep it in there for 15 minutes, temp it, see where it's at. Keep it in there for 30 minutes. If it's still, you know, whenever it gets at around 78 degrees, then you can take it out. And by that point, you may be ready for it to go back in the fridge. So you might not have to worry about it. Our dough is 82 degrees. I know that I'm not going to have to cool it down. The world that this dough is existing in, the regular like room temperature house that we're in right now, is going to take the temp down low enough to the point of where I'm not going to have to worry about it going crazy, getting out of control. If it's the other way around, if it's too cold, if you didn't get it even close to 75 degrees, if it's like 68 or something, you can actually take it and stick it outside. If it's warm outside, you can put it, you know, cover it, of course. You can put it in your oven with the oven light on. Stick it in there. Again, you know, check it every 15 to 30 minutes. You're trying to get the temperature to be in that sweet spot, 78 to low 80s, 83 degrees. At this point, we can start the process of kneading it. So we do 4 sets of stretch and fold, or like a bowl knead, and that's going to be 15 minutes apart. Okay, so this is going to be the beginning of that first 15 minutes. So we're going to take our little towel, cover it up, set a 15-minute timer, and we're going to come back. It's been 15 minutes. So now this is going to be the first stretch and fold, bowl knead, whatever you want to say. So generally, like a stretch and fold, you know, you would kind of pull it up high and then bring it over, and then do that like 3 or 4 times. This is more of like a bowl knead. So again, this process, pick up a piece, push it down in the middle, and then keep doing that. So what I've been doing for these 4 bowl kneads, these 4 stretch and folds, whatever you want to call them, we're going to call them bowl kneads. I've been counting to 50. So that's 50 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on until you get to 50. And you can see that the dough, it's a little bit less pieced out than it was. It's a little bit less kind of chunky sectioned. It's starting to pull together. And as we go, the idea is to kind of end up with a nice, tight dough ball. And the reason I do 50 is because I found that if I go any more than that, it tends to kind of like start to tear the dough apart, starts to make it rip. We're trying to bring the gluten to the point of where it stretches and stretches and stretches, but we don't want it to tear. Okay, we'll say that's about 50. And you can see that it's, you know, it's a bit of a mess right here. So this is still the first one, but down on the sides, it's starting to kind of come together. And let's see, it's not really sticking to the bowl. It's pulling away. So that looks good. We're going to leave it like that for another 15. And we'll come back and we'll do the same thing. We're going to do the same thing 3 more times. Cover it up. Round 2. Okay, another 50 folds, count to 50, pull up, tuck in, pull up, tuck in, repeat. There we go, and that's 50. You can see, come take a close look. Here you can see that it has changed again. It's starting to look even smoother. Very nice. All right, so we'll cover it back up. Another 15 minutes, come back for round 3. Round 3. So just real quick, before we do round 3, let's go ahead and check our temperature to see if we're still in the good range. Okay, that says 80.9, 81. That's good. That's what we want. So it dropped down about 2 degrees. So 50 more turns, 50 more rotations, and let's go. You can really feel that the dough is starting to tighten up. So just really quick, come over here. I want you to look at something. So this is the 3rd round of stretch and folds or bowl kneads, and we're going to go ahead and give it the window pane test to see if it's strong enough to stretch out and let light through without ripping. And I'd say we're there, but it's pretty close. So we'll do another 15 minutes. And then we'll come back for the last rotation of bowl kneads. See you in 15. All right, so at this point, we are to our last set of stretch and folds, or bowl kneads. So we're gonna do those. Wet your fingertips one last time. And we're gonna work our way around. Same motion, grabbing, pulling. So, you know, with the 4 sets of bowl kneads that we've done in that hour, 15 minutes apart, the yeast, the starter, has, you know, it's doing its thing. It's reproducing. It's, you know, making air bubbles. It's making carbon dioxide. It's doing what it's supposed to do. But we still need to give it a little bit more time to kind of, you know, really get going. So I'm going to put this dough into a container, a larger container. Oh, and you know, if you don't have a larger container, it can stay in the bowl. You know, just leave it where it is, and maybe do a couple more sets of stretch and folds. But for this recipe, I recommend a 2nd container. And we're going to take the dough, come on in, and we're going to kind of pull it out into this larger container. And you can see how cleanly that came out of the bowl. There's a little bit stuck around the outside, but for the most part, that's a good sign. That means that your dough is strong. It's all in one piece. It's kind of where you want it to be. I'm gonna wet my hands again, and I'm gonna kind of just give this dough a little shape, just kind of get it into the box the way I want it, like that. And this is really more so that the lid won't hit the top of it. We're going to temp it one last time just to kind of make sure that we're at a good temperature at our target. So we, you know, 79 degrees, that's actually really good. That's where we want it. And, you know, we temped it a few times throughout the process, so we know that it's close, but, you know, just to make 100% sure that we're good whenever we're actually closing it up for this final hour rest. There we are, 79 degrees. That's real nice. We're going to pop the lid on top of this box and come back in a half an hour, and we're going to do a different set of stretch and folds, and I'll show you that. All right, it's been 30 minutes. So now we're going to do our first stretch and fold here. So there's lots of ways to do stretch and folds. This is just how I do it. I don't think there's really like a wrong way to do it. But this is how I do it. I lift it up, kind of like picking the whole thing up, and this just makes sure that the whole thing, you know, that all of the dough is getting stretched out. So I'm wetting my hands. And I'm going to go underneath the dough, kind of pick it up like this. And it's good to use like a, you know, somewhat heavy container, because if you don't want it coming with you when you pick the dough up. but I'm putting my hands underneath it and then just kind of letting it hang. Give it a little shake if you want to. The idea here is that we want the dough to kind of, you know, hang down low, stretch out everything that we've done. Okay? And then I'm going to put it back down in the container like this, and then give it one more. You see how it's not very slack? That means that the dough, the gluten is tight. It's strong. See that? That's strong dough. And look, if you get in here real close too, you can see that we have some nice bubblage there. Some good fermentation. All right, so we put it back down into the box. I'm gonna do one more little shape, kind of similar to what I did when I first put it in. All right, okay, we're gonna put the lid back on it and let it sit here for another 30 minutes. So we'll see you then. This is the second set of stretch and folds. So same as we did before. Wet your hands, get up underneath, and then bring it up. Just kind of let it hang down. I kind of give it a little bounce. Let it really stretch. All right, and then back into the box, laying it over itself. You can give it one more. You can see it's not really falling. So nice and tight. All right, I'm gonna lay it back down, tuck it back in. The starter has been in the dough doing its thing for a couple of hours now, and it's good. It's got a good head start on fermentation. So this dough, we're gonna put it in the refrigerator, and it's gonna go in there for 3 days. So this is a 72-hour bulk fermentation. So if you want to take it out, you can actually use this after 24 hours. You can use it after 48, but I get the best results, best flavor, best everything with a 3-day cold fermentation. So lid goes on. The whole thing goes in the fridge for 3 days. And that's it. We'll be back in 3 days. Actually, we'll be back in 2 days to portion and weigh the dough, and I'll show you how to do that. Today is day 3. Is it? What day is it? So we made the dough. We made the dough on Tuesday. Wednesday was yesterday. Today's Thursday. So this is day 2. Today is day 2. So the dough's been in the fridge since Tuesday, since we made it. So for 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to take it out. We're going to weigh it, portion it, and then we're going to shape it up, and then we're going to put it back in the fridge. So tomorrow is going to be pizza day. And that'll be the 3rd day of its fermentation. We're going to take it out, and we're going to use it tomorrow. So we're going to take a little bit of flour, just a pinch, and we're going to dust the top of our work surface. Now there's a few different ways to do this. You know, some people use oil, some people put a little bit of water. You know, this is the way that I do it. This surface right here is a little bit too porous. I find if I use water on it, it soaks the water up, the dough ends up sticking. It's going to stick a little bit anyway, but this will actually kind of help it not stick too much. And this is a very small amount of flour, so you don't need to really worry about messing with your hydration or anything like that. This is probably less than 4 grams, so you could use all of this flour, put it into the dough. It's not really gonna mess with the hydration, and we won't even be using all of this. Some of it will be left on top of the block. So we're gonna take the dough out. All right. So why am I shaping it today? I'm shaping it today because I might not have time to do it tomorrow, pretty much. And it allows it to have one more day of fermentation in its final shape. All right, so this part is kind of important. So this right here is going to be the top of the dough, or the outside of the dough. Okay, it's more important when it comes to the smaller dough balls, not so much important whenever you're doing like, you know, a sheet pan pizza or a pizza that's going to be in some kind of a dish. For that, it doesn't make as much of a difference which side is which. But so you're going to take your container. So we're going to turn it upside down. So if you have a bowl, you just kind of scoop it and you try to keep this part facing downward. So I'm going to turn this upside down, and then I'm going to grab from underneath. And you can use a bench scraper for this, but fingers are fine. And just kind of gradually, and I'm just pulling down, trying to keep the outside of the dough down on the surface. You can kind of move the container away slowly as you go. And I'm just kind of clawing, scooping, scraping the dough off the inside of the box as we go along. And you can see there's hardly anything left in there. So we're going to put our dough balls into this whenever they go back in the fridge for the last day. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse this out. Tools for this step: digital scale, dough scraper, dough cutter, bench scraper, one of these. So we're going to take a small plate and we're going to put it down on top of the scale. And I'm going to put some flour, just a little bit of flour on this. And this is just to kind of make sure that the dough doesn't stick to the plate. If I did it straight on top of the scale, you know, every time I go to pull the dough off, if it does stick, it's going to take the scale with it. So, and it's easier to clean up this way. So just to kind of get it a little bit more even, I'm going to stretch the dough out a bit. Not really a fully necessary step, but it does help you to get an even cut. So go ahead and just grab a chunk, get underneath, and then cut. And the idea here is to try to get it right at 280. So this will take some tries. And let's see, this one, I think I'm off. I think I'm probably close to 260 on this one. Let's see. Oh, 317. All right, so if you're over, cut a little bit off, weigh it again, 296, 281, close enough. Okay, take your little scraps, put them back in, and then you're going to set this off to the side right here. Okay, so we're just going to repeat the same thing. So you can see that I'm keeping the bottom of the dough, or the part that's facing the block, I'm keeping that as the bottom because we want this to be the outside of the dough ball. That's the goal. All right, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 280s, and then we have the rest is for the large pizzas. So first, we're gonna leave this right here. We're going to show you how to shape this. So there are a few different ways you can do this. You know, you could turn it upside down and shape it on the bench like a loaf of bread. But just for this video, I'm going to show you this way. It's a very simple way. It's the way that I do it pretty much every time. But you want to keep this on the bottom, okay? If you feel like it's sticking too much, like it shouldn't be at this point, but if you feel like it's sticking too much, just put a little bit of flour on your hands. And that'll keep it dry. But you don't want too much because you want the dough to stick to itself. So we're going to go ahead and fold it in. Pinch, making like a little pocket. And we're going to do the same thing. Fold it back in on itself. Try to seal up the lines. Okay, should have like a little hot dog bun looking thing. And then one more time, do the same thing. And seal it in. And then from here, we're going to take the whole thing and kind of pinch it in on itself, squeeze, rotate, squeeze, rotate, and you're kind of pressing with your thumb. Press with your thumb, and you're pinching all these little edges together. Okay, so you're pressing with your thumb, you're pinching, rotating, spinning, and I'm using my other hand to kind of turn it around in my hand as I go. And it should seal it up on the bottom like that. And then the other side looks like that, nice and pretty. And then from there, we're going to put it right there. You don't need any kind of, there's no flour, there's no water, it's just the plastic on the bottom. These guys, they'll stick a little bit, but not to the point of where it's going to mess anything up. They're going to be fine. You don't need anything in here. I'll show you that again. So again, start with the bottom in the palm of your hands. Fold it over. Pinch. Rotate. Fold it over. Pinch it closed. And then you have your little bun. One more time. Pinch it closed, and that will keep everything, it's going to be nice and even on the inside. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and pinch it again here. Rotate, and you want to work these little holes down toward the center. So it's kind of like dragging, I'm kind of dragging the dough on the palm of my hand, and then pinching with my thumb, squeezing in with my ring finger and my thumb at the same time, and then rotating. And I'm just trying to get all of the edges pinched in to the bottom so that it's sealed up on the bottom. And if it looks like it's pulling away from itself, you know, you can kind of pinch a little bit more. And then when that's done, put it right there in the box, right next to its friend. Okay, for the next two, I'm gonna strap up with the first person so you can kind of get like a, you can see what I see. All right, so we're in first person. So we're gonna go ahead and squeeze it in. Outside of the dough facing the palm. One time, then a second time. And then a third time. Okay, got your little bun. Grab all that in. Pinch it with your middle finger and your thumb. And then I'm rotating with my left. And you're just kind of working it all the way around like this until it tightens down. Seals on the bottom. And we'll put it in. Okay. I'm going to show you the last one. Pinch in, and if you see any little bubbles kind of pop up, you can just pop them. Okay, I'm going to squeeze it on in. Squeeze it on in. And then pinch, rotate, pinch. And this is, you know, this right here takes a little bit of practice, but it's not the hardest thing to master. You just have to, it just takes repetition. And you know, there are other ways to do this, but this is the way that I do it. This works for me. And it's a good one to learn, I think. All right, so there we have our 4 little dough balls, our 280 gram dough balls that will be cooked on the Gozney Roccbox outside. These are going to be the Neapolitan style pizzas. They need to be out of the fridge about 3 hours before you cook them. So if you have, if you don't think you're going to have enough time, you know, you can do an hour out today. You can do 2 hours out today, and it'll actually take a little bit less time for them to be ready. And you're going to be able to see what they look like when they are ready. But, you know, have them out of the fridge before you actually use them for about 3 hours, I would say. Throw the lid on and into the fridge. All right, so we have the 280 gram dough balls in the box in the fridge ready to go. So now we're going to go ahead and do our 600 gram and the 450 gram. So this whole thing weighs about 1,000 grams, like 1,050 give or take. So let's just try to I'm just going to try to eye up where I think 600 grams might be. And I think that this is about 600 grams. So I'm just going to kind of chop it down the middle. I'm going to fold this over once. I'm going to fold this over the other way. And before we go too far with another fold, we'll go ahead and weigh it. 623, not bad. So I'm just going to cut a little bit off. 607. Okay, we'll go with that. All right, so I have my folds that I made. Now I'm going to take this long piece of dough and I'm going to fold it over again, just kind of like a letter. All right, and we have this little square. So from here, I'm just going to seal up the ends. And this is making a nice little air pocket for, you know, all of the bubbles to form. So for this one, we want it to be, you know, nice and airy. We want a lot of bubbles. You don't want too many bubbles with those other ones, because they'll, you know, if you have a lot of bubbles in your dough when you're making a pizza like that, they'll kind of get in the way. They can cause thin spots. They can, you know, give you holes in your dough. So you want less big bubbles in those smaller doughs. And for these, it doesn't make that much of a difference because it's going to be cooked in a pan. Sometimes the big bubbles are kind of nice. All right, so we're all sealed up along the edges. We have a nice little dough package right there. So this one is going to go in a plastic container. Again, no oil, no flour needed. Just put the dough straight in like that. Cover on the top. And this one, I actually like to let it sit out. So I want a lot of bubbles in this one. I want some airiness. I want bubbles. I want bubblage in this one. So this one, I actually, if I have the time, I let it sit out for a couple hours before I put it in the fridge. All right, and just to see how we did, let's go ahead and weigh this one. So we want this one to be what, 450, right? 478. Okay, so that means that, you know, we have a little bit of overage, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. All right, so this one is going to end up being a round pizza also, so I'm going to actually shape it in a similar way to the other ones. So squeeze it up. But again, it's not really important that this one is, you know, shaped properly, because it's going to go in a cast iron and it's going to sit there. So if you have big bubbles like that, just squeeze them, pop them. And now by shaping this, you know, instead of like letting this dough sit for a while before you shape it, or doing a bench rest is where you kind of you portion out your dough and you weigh it and then you let it sit for about 10 minutes. So we didn't do any of that because I don't want, you know, a lot of crazy bubbles going on right now. So by taking it out of the fridge, cutting it, portioning it, weighing it, shaping it almost right away, I feel like you have a little bit more control over what happens with the dough instead of waiting around. So this one is going to be cooked in a round cast iron pan. So I'm putting it in a round container. Straight in, no flour, no oil. Lid on the top. And this one's going to sit at room temp for 2 hours also. Okay, so that's it. The next step is going to be pizza day, pizza night. It's going to be us actually cooking these things. So I'll see you then. So this is it. We're here. It's pizza night. This is our finished product right here. This is the dough that has been in the refrigerator since Tuesday. It's pizza night, so there's gonna be some background noise. That's just the part of it. Part of pizza night. It is Friday. We did it on Tuesday. We made this on Tuesday, and it's been sitting out at room temperature for about 4 hours at this point. So it's good to go. It is risen and it's ready to cook. So let's go ahead and make a pizza. Okay, I'm gonna put it down into a container with flour, well floured on both sides. And we're gonna press starting at the top, working your way down, kind of making a crust along the outside, using your ring fingers as like a guide there. Turn it, do the same thing. Okay, I'm just kind of working my fingers around, making a crust. All right, take it out, bring it over to where you're gonna work with the pizza. Knock some of the flour off, lay it down. Okay, and then we're gonna do the same thing on the actual work surface. So starting at the top, push down, pretty decent pressure. I'm pressing hard enough so that I can actually feel the board. Turn it around and do the same thing, leaving a crust there. Okay, I'm gonna press out any air bubbles that are remaining. And we're left with that. Okay, now we're gonna lift it up, put it in one hand, flip it over to the other hand, back and forth. Kind of letting gravity do the work. A little bit of a flip, stretch it out. Hands slightly open. The more you do this, the more comfortable you get with it. Just takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of repetition. Okay, the dough is about that big. So depending on the size of your oven, you know, you can stretch it bigger, go further. I have a Gozney Roccbox, which is a 12-inch oven, so it makes 12-inch pizzas. That's what this is. All right, this pizza is gonna be a spicy margarita. Taking 1 scoop of Calabrian chili paste, right there in the middle. Not quite a full ladle. Tomato sauce, right on top. Spread it around. Right. Fresh mozzarella. Let's throw some roasted garlic on this one too. Why not? Why not? Fresh basil. A little bit of olive oil on the leaves, not too much. We already have the oil from the chili paste and the oil from the garlic, so don't want to go overboard. A little salt. Okay. A little flour on the peel. Throw it around. Grab the edge, hold it up. One quick motion. Pull the edges. Stretch it out so it fits your peel. Nice and round. Let's go cook it. All right, in she goes. All right, we'll count to 30 and give it a turn. See, that side's cooked. 180 degrees. Back in. Count to 30 again. And then we're going to turn it. Checking for any light spots. I'd say we can call that done. That looks nice. Nice even cook. Crust is crunchy, but still soft. Still springs back. Yeah, looks good. Let's cut it. Gummy bears, yum. All right. Nice even cook. Crunchy, soft crust. Good cook on the bottom. There it is. Spicy roasted garlic margarita. So good. All right. That's it. We did it. You did it. Thank you for watching this video. Like, subscribe, watch my shorts. Go look at my shorts. Yeah, not those shorts, the other ones. If I missed something, if I didn't say something, if you have a question, drop it in the comments and I'm gonna do my best. I read them all. I'm obsessed. I'm New Young Pizza Guy. I'm out here making pizza. Thank you for watching.